Excellencies, co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. A warm welcome to all of you joining us today for this webinar, Building the Future, Innovative Wood Solutions for Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Bioeconomy. My name is Thais Linhares Venal, and I am Senior Advisor in the FAO's Forestry Division in FAO's headquarters in Rome. I am your moderator today. It's my pleasure to drive you through this interesting discussion about how wood solutions can help us to enhance resilience of our built environment and also offer us opportunities to speed up the Sustainable Development Goals, in particular, the goals for adequate and sustainable and affordable housing. This webinar, if you haven't joined us before, you might know that this is the fifth webinar of a global webinar series, which is an integral part of the country and organization-led initiative on sustainable forest-based approach to the bioeconomy. Supported by the Federal Ministry, Agriculture and Forestry, Climate and Environmental Protection, Regions and Water Management of the Republic of Austria, and the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry of the Republic of Finland. Today, our webinar is all about building the future. We will explore how innovative wood solutions are not only addressing climate crisis, but also creating opportunities for sustainable development, affordable housing, and thriving forest economies. The building sector is responsible for 21% of global greenhouse gas emissions. At the same time, we face a mounting housing crisis. 96,000 new residential units are needed daily to meet demand by 2030. Sustainable wood construction presents a unique opportunity to tackle both challenges simultaneously. I'm sorry, I'm seeing a heads up. No. In fact, we have an opportunity to strike a triple win. Climate mitigation, healthy forests and landscapes, and increased access to adequate and affordable housing. An impactful climate solution and an accelerator for sustainable development. Engineered wood products, and more specifically, mass timber products, can reshape the built environment, open markets for sustainable forest management and planted forests, support biodiverse production systems, and address the urgent need for climate-resilient housing. In this webinar, we are going to discuss all these options. We will discuss how policies, finance, and knowledge can accelerate this transformation and hear from leaders who are making it happen on the ground. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you that this webinar is being recorded, and the recording, along with any presentation materials, will be made available on the webinar webpage shortly after the session. You are welcome to submit your questions at any time using the question and answers function. We'll do our best to address them during the Q&A segment at the end of the expert panel. You can also use the chat to share comments, engage with other participants, or let us know if you are experiencing any technical difficulties. Now, let's get started. To set the stage for today's conversation, I am pleased to welcome the co-chairs of this webinar, who bring both national leadership and global perspective to this discussion. Ms. Megan Masters, Manager of Multilateral Affairs at Natural Resource Canada, Canadian Forest Service. Megan Masters is the Deputy Director of Multilateral Affairs in the Canadian Forest Service. Megan's team at the Canadian Forest Service is responsible for representing Canada and its forest policy positions across multilateral fora. Megan has extensive experience across Canada Federal Public Service, serving as Deputy Director of the G7 Wildfire Task Team, Deputy Director of Biofuels Policy and Crown Consultation Coordinator with Indigenous peoples on major projects, among other positions on natural resources and beyond. Growing up in Newfoundland, Canada, has instilled in Megan a love of the wilderness and background camping with her family. Megan Masters, we are honored to have you with us today to share Canada's experience and vision. The floor is yours for the opening remarks.
Thank you very much. Honorable colleagues, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to be here with you today. As Thais mentioned, as co-chair, I was asked to say a few words on the triple win involving sustainable wood products to help set the tone for the webinar. In that vein, as you're aware, products such as mass timber can deliver climate mitigation, healthy forests, and a sustainable and innovative bioeconomy that can contribute to addressing global housing challenges. I'll be speaking on behalf of the Government of Canada, a nation of vast forests that are central to our national identity and provide invaluable ecosystem goods and services. For additional background, over 23 million Canadians live in or near forests. As well, the forest sector supports more than 300 forest-reliant communities and is particularly important for many rural, remote, and Indigenous communities, where forest-related activities are often the main source of income. In recent years, the global forest community has made numerous commitments to protect, conserve, and sustainably use forests, including the UN Strategic Plan for Forests, the Glasgow Leaders' Declaration on Forests and Land Use, the KMGBF, as well as others. One international effort we have prioritized is the Forest and Climate Leaders Partnership, where Canada co-chairs the Greening Construction with Sustainable Wood Action Area alongside France and Kenya. Today, I want to share a few developments with respect to the intersection of wood construction, housing, innovation, and Canada's journey towards carbon neutrality as a sustainable bioeconomy. All over the world, countries face a common challenge to provide affordable, resilient housing while meeting our obligations to a healthy planet. Wood construction, underpinned by sustainable forest management, has a long history in Canada. But building with wood is not just about tradition, it's about innovation. Canadian researchers and industry leaders are pioneering advances in engineered wood-based products such as mass timber, cross-laminated timber, and other prefabricated components and assemblies that are redefining what's possible in construction. We're seeing taller and larger wooden buildings, automation through prefabrication that increases productivity, faster assembly times, reduced carbon, and reduced waste, all of which are changing what we build and how we build it. Why focus on wood construction? Wood construction merges environmental stewardship, technical advancement, and social progress in ways that few materials can. The environmental benefits are clear. When properly managed, wood is renewable, stores carbon, and requires less energy to process than concrete or steel. It can also be designed for reuse by adopting design for disassembly and reuse concepts at the end of building service life. As well, housing affordability and supply matter. Canadians are calling for homes that are affordable, energy efficient, and built to last. Earlier this year, Canada launched Build Canada Homes, a new federal agency that will build affordable housing at scale. Working with provinces, territories, municipalities, and Indigenous communities, the goal is to build affordable and community housing for low-income households, capitalizing on the availability of domestically available advanced wood-based products. In order to move quickly in response to our housing crisis, Build Canada Homes will place an intense focus on using factory-built, modular, and mass timber construction materials. We are investing in research and development to support innovation in wood products, updating codes and standards so that taller and larger timber construction is an option in more places, and supporting partnerships between provinces, territories, Indigenous partners, and the private sector to accelerate adoption. But progress depends on collaboration. We need to develop and build the future design and construction capacity. Architects, engineers, builders, and policymakers must champion wood construction. We need educational institutions to train the workforce. We need homeowners, developers, financial institutions, lenders, renters, and community leaders to embrace these solutions. Federal government programs, like our Green Construction Through Wood program, are working with all construction partners to advance wood use in such non-traditional construction applications by contributing to the development of design and construction capacity, showcasing innovative wood-based building technologies through demonstration projects, and support building code changes. The Investment in the Forest Industry Transformation Program, IFIT, was launched in 2010 to facilitate the adoption and early access to transformative technologies and products in the Canadian forest sector to bridge the gap between development and commercialization. These programs also contribute to developing Canada's sustainable bioeconomy based on products that are renewable, sustainably sourced, and less carbon intensive. They also help deliver great economic value for each tree harvested by helping to drive efficiency gains in forest harvesting, processing, and manufacturing, including through reuse, recycling, and cascading practices. For example, the 2 million invested in Les Chantiers Chabougamau to modernize production processes of finger jointed lumber, glue laminated, I-joists, and cross-laminated timber through the innovative use of artificial intelligence. This project supports a strong Canadian supply of value-added advanced wood construction products. I'm looking forward to hearing more of what my fellow co-chair and all of the panelists have to say on this important topic. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Megan. That was a fantastic beginning for our webinar. I was so happy to hear you talking about the Canadian experience and mentioning the importance of partnerships, partnerships across the value chain, partnerships also between different regions, between different locations, and more than that, that it's not only about sustainable wood use, it's also about efficiency gains and innovation. Thank you so much. It's now my great pleasure to move to Ecuador and introduce Ingeniero Angel Lerena, Undersecretary of Forest Production of the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fisheries of Ecuador. Angel Lerena Zambrano is recognized for his leadership in the sustainable management of the Ecuador's forest resources. He has spearheaded key regulatory reforms and promoted the creation of technical working groups with stakeholders from the timber and balsa sectors aimed at achieving sustainable development and formalization within Ecuador's forestry industry. With a strong background in public policy, environmental conservation, and rural development, Angel has led initiatives focused on community reforestation, integrated fire management, and technical training and knowledge transfer for producers, forestry engineers, and local communities. Ingeniero Lerena, we look forward to hearing about Ecuador's priorities and visions on sustainable wooden construction. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Hello, distinguished colleagues, authority experts, and participants. It's an honor to join today as a co-president of this important webinar, Building the Future Innovative Wood Solutions for Carbon Neutrality and Sustainable Bioeconomy. On behalf of the Government of Ecuador and the Ministry of Agriculture, Livestock and Fishing, I extend my warm greetings and appreciation for this space of dialogue and collaboration. In a world that urgently seeks sustainable pathways to address climate change, wood emerge as a timeless yet innovation solution, a material that connects our ancestral knowledge with the technologies and aspirations of the 21st century. In Ecuador, forests are not merely a resource, they are a strategy for sustainable development and climate action. Our country has 12.4 million hectares of natural forests and more than 171,000 of hectares of forest plantations, which generates around like 200,000 direct and indirect jobs, mostly in the rural areas. The forestry sector continued to grow at an annual rate of 7.5%, contributing to economic development, social inclusion, and environmental stewardship. From the Undersecretary of Forest Production that I preside, we have worked to strengthen sustainable forest management, promote certification and traceability of food products, and encourage responsibility industrializations that adds value with reducing pressure of natural forests. These policies are aligned with Ecuador's commitment to a bioeconomy that balances productivity, conservation, and social equality. Each cubic meter of wood used in construction can store up than a ton of CO2, turning buildings into living carbon sinks. This is the power of building with nature, not against it. Ecuador is advancing towards as a forest-based bioeconomy, integrating public policy, innovation finances, and technical knowledge to scale up sustainable wood solutions. We're working hand in hand with the private sector, academia, and international organizations to position wood as a key element in achieve carbon neutrality and resilient rural development. Today, global meetings remind us that cooperation is the cornerstone of transformation. By connecting innovation, policies, and investment, we can expand the impact of sustainable woods construction and build as a shared vision for a climate resilient and inclusive future. Thank you very much and have a nice welcome.
Thanks a lot, Engenheiro Lerena. Uh, it's very good that you emphasized how strategic wood is for sustainable development and for forests, and that forests are strategic for our livelihoods. It's strategic for our planet, so things are connected. And I also would like to highlight your mentioning of connecting ancestral knowledge with innovation. And Megan mentioned that as well. And this is very important that we keep in mind when developing the programs and developing the policies to advance sustainable wood as part of our built environment. Thank you very much. And now I would like to make a poll. Let me turn to you, dear participants, to launch a quick poll to learn where you are connecting from today. And I can see from the chat that you are connecting from all over the world, literally. So, poll one, where are you joining from? Please answer. Colleagues, do you have a result already that would like to show? Fantastic. 29% from Africa, 10% from Asia, and thanks a lot. I know it's very late there. I saw people from Japan connecting. 43% from Europe, 12% from Latin America, and 6% from North America. Thank you very much for being with us today. And so we're coming to this exciting moment. No, not yet. We have a second poll. Let's go to a second poll. What is the key action to increase adoption of sustainable wood construction as a solution for a forest-positive, climate-resilient built environment? And we heard a lot from our co-chairs already, a lot of good ideas, a lot of good knowledge from people who are implementing on the ground. So please let us know your views. What's the key action to increase adoption of sustainable wood construction as a solution for a forest-positive, climate-resilient built environment? Development of a sustainable and reliable forest product supply based on a variety of production systems, inclusive of smallholders and SMEs. Public-private civil society collaboration to foster innovation to support efficient production of sustainable wood products. Public-private civil society collaboration to speed up capacity building across the value chain. Public policies encouraging adoption of wood constructions in housing programs. Development of standards, principles, and guidelines, awareness raising campaigns to promote sustainable wood building benefits, and knowledge sharing at global, regional, and national level. Giving you a few more seconds for us to see the results. Ready to go? Okay. 25% development of a sustainable and reliable forest product supply based on a variety of production systems, inclusive of smallholders and SMEs, and very close to 24% development of standards, principles, and guidelines, awareness-raising campaigns to promote sustainable wood buildings benefits. And we can see also very high consideration to the importance to the public policies, encouraging adoption of wood constructions in housing programs, so the linkage that we need to make. And the public-private civil society collaboration to speed up capacity building across the value chain. All of these options, they actually come together, but it's very interesting to see the priority, where to begin. It's a lot to do, but it's possible to do. It's possible to make it, and maybe we can have here some understanding on where our priorities according to our guests today. So now is this exciting moment. I'm so excited to have such a fantastic keynote with us today. So I am delighted to introduce Professor Hans-Joachim Schellenhuber, Director General of the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis, IASA. Professor Schellenhuber, Doctor honoris causa from multiple organizations and a Commander of the Order of the British Empire, is a renowned physicist and climate scientist specializing in quantum physics, complex systems, and sustainability science. Pioneering in climate science, he founded Bauhaus Earth, focusing on regenerative architecture, and was the founding director of the Potsdam Institute for Climate Impact Research. With over 300 scientific publications, he is globally recognized by Clarovite as a highly cited researcher and advised global leaders, including German Chancellor Angela Merkel and late Pope Francis. He has received numerous prestigious honors, including the Blue Planet Prize and Germany's Grand Cross of Merit. Professor Schellenhuber, it's a great honor to have you with us today. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be with you here, and actually in the background, my slides will be uploaded here. Let me just say up front that many important things have been commented already. I would like to give you the summary in one bottom line, so to speak, of my talk. It is, if we keep on constructing buildings and settlements the conventional way, then we will probably, derail the climate completely. But if we switch to regenerative architecture and sustainable forestry, when we have actually a chance to even heal the climate again, to repair the climate. And this is a unique opportunity, and only the combination of forestry and construction can deliver that. It's the best last hope we have for the climate. Okay, so the two elements are, as you see in the title, reforesting the planet. So even reforesting degraded land and retimbering the city, that means really build in the future more or less all settlements from organic materials and also repair existing materials, existing buildings by organic materials. Okay, next slide, please. We all refer to the Paris Agreement turning 10 years old now this year, actually, and this will be acknowledged in Belém at the COP30. And you know, the most important thing is that in Paris, it was agreed that by international law that we must keep global warming well below 2 degrees. And I show you where we are right now, actually. Why 2 degrees? Next slide, please. So this is the reason why we really have to keep global warming below the Paris line of 2 degrees, ideally even 1.5 degrees, but that is already beyond reach, more or less. It has to do with the so-called tipping elements in the Earth system. That means you have big subsystems of the global environment, like the big ice sheets, the ocean currents, the monsoon systems, for example, and the big ecosystems like the rainforests in the Amazon basin, in the Congo basin, very important, and in Indonesia. And we can demonstrate climate science that if you push global warming beyond certain lines, in particular beyond 2 degrees, when we will actually tip these ecosystems into a new state or may even destroy them entirely. Yeah? Just to give you one example, the tropical coral reefs will be destroyed already between 1.5 and 2 degrees warming. We have to keep that in mind. Next slide. Okay, and this is my master slide, if you like. So first you see on the horizontal line that's time between 1900 and 2200. On a vertical axis, you have global mean temperature change, global warming above pre-industrial, 1 degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. And you see the Paris line, so that is 1.5 degrees warming and 2 degrees. 2 degrees is really international law. Now let's see how far we have gone so far. So you see last year, 2024, was the hottest year on record. And actually it was 1.6 degrees above pre-industrial. So the first level, so to speak, of Paris was reached already. Now let's see what will happen in the future. Click, please. So under business as usual, we will go far beyond even 2 degrees, actually around 3 degrees by the end of the century and then even further. And this is clearly something which is not in line with a civilization of 8 or 10 billion people on Earth. So this would be unmanageable. So what is the alternative? Well, the alternative will look like this. Next click, please. This is what we call overshoot. So you see, we will probably even breach the 2 degrees line in 20, 30 years from now. And when we will go beyond that. But the most important and crucial thing is that we keep this excursion into the hot risk zone as flat and short as possible. So coming back, actually bending the global warming curve back to below 2 degrees and hopefully also 1.5 degrees. But you see the time already. This will take probably 200 years. So let's face that. How can it be achieved? Well, next click. So in order to not keep global warming going, actually, we have to reduce emissions to zero. That comes in particular by switching to renewable energy, so decarbonizing our industrial metabolism. But actually to bend the curve down again, that is the next click. For that, and this was mentioned already by my predecessors, you have to have so-called negative emissions. You have to extract carbon again from the atmosphere. And the best possible option for that is photosynthesis, of course. When a tree grows, it takes actually CO2 out from the atmosphere and stores it and converts it into biomass by photosynthesis. So this is the best machinery for repairing the climate. Next click, please. While we will be in overshoot, this is above 1.5 degrees. We will have to weather many storms, extreme events, all types of changes in ecosystems. And this will be a rough ride for humanity, but we have to face it. We have to manage overshoot now. Next slide, please. Now, I talked about energy, and everyone has focused more or less on the energy transition for stabilizing the climate, but you should appreciate that matter matters at least as much as energy. So this is a famous publication now showing that on Earth, the total collection of artificial materials, in particular concrete, steel, plastics, and so on, have now the same weight as the living biomass. So we have now about 1,200 gigatons, billion tons of sort of artificial materials on Earth, in particular in the building sector, in infrastructure like asphalt. And this has to be turned into biomass again, harvested biomass. That is the solution for the climate problem. Next slide, please. So we have to talk about the elephant in the sustainability room, the built environment. And if we click again, we see it was mentioned before, 21% of it put together, building, operating, and demolishing sort of settlements, when it's about 40% of all greenhouse gas emission coming from the built environment. Next slide, please. Okay, now here again we have just publishing a paper in one of the nature journals showing that, maybe you click again, Leon. If we continue to build the old way, the construction sector alone will actually breach the 1.5 and the 2 degrees line. I mean, 1.5 is already water under the bridge, but actually we will go beyond 2 degrees just with the construction sector alone. So we have to change, actually. We have to actually completely reverse the narrative of construction. Next slide, please. This is a publication we did in 2020, which has become very, very influential and has been cited more than 1,000 times already. Buildings as a global carbon sink. So instead of having a major source of greenhouse gas emissions from the construction sector, let's convert buildings into big carbon sinks by using photosynthetic material, of course, biomass, and keep the houses and the infrastructures and the settlements sort of intact for many hundred years, actually. So it's both using the right material, and second, also keep these structures intact for many, many years, not burning them after 40 years, for example. Next slide, please. So just an illustration. This was published in Science recently. Look at the headline: building materials could store more than 60 billion tons of CO2 annually. This is actually 40% of the entire emissions from our civilization. You see the power of that. Now the question immediately comes, next slide, please. Where does the biomass come from? And as I said before, of course, we have to well manage in a sustainable way our current forest, but we also have to reforest degraded land. And here again, we have about 1 billion hectares of degraded land on this planet, which we can turn into thriving ecosystems and can use for the production of biomass, for construction, and many other things. Next slide, please. I skip this for the sake of time. Next one, please. Okay, here's an important thing, and keep this, Leon. So the first one. There are a number of publications now showing that if you replace concrete and steel for building materials, then in the end, and these are the two green columns, watch precisely, this is below zero. That means negative emissions. So if you combine the provision of the material from sustainable forestry with the right construction principles, so cross-laminated timber, for example, was mentioned before, when you are net negative, really, that means construction then becomes climate positive. And that is the only sector we have in the world which can be turned from a climate sinner into a climate saint, so to speak. I skipped the next slide, so Leon, just rush through the next slides. That's very important. Okay, click, please. Click again and again. Okay, so this is the bottom line here. If you have a house built from concrete and steel and so on, by construction, you have lots of emission. Even if you operate the house with renewable energy, you cannot get rid of the carbon that you have by construction. Now, if you go below here to the blue line, if you have built a house, for example, or an infrastructure from timber or bamboo, and if you keep the material alive by reusing, or even keep the building or the infrastructure maintained over many hundred years, which is possible, when you have actually extracted a net amount of carbon from the atmosphere. And this is a fantastic opportunity, and it's actually the only one that really scales. That means which you can provide in billions of places, really. So it's, as I said in the beginning, our best hope for climate restoration, not just climate stabilization. Next slide, please. So just to show you, please click. Often people argue, well, wooden houses will be destroyed after 40 years. It turns out the recent surveys that the reason why wooden houses, for example, were destroyed after a certain time, a few decades actually, was never that they were not intact anymore, that they were not functional anymore. It was just owners wanted to have a different type of house. That means we can entertain timber buildings or bamboo buildings for many centuries, actually. By the way, as our ancestors did. Next slide, please. This is more or less the technical, the systems analysis. You add actually a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere by burning fossil fuels. Then you store it in forest. When you take the biomass of mature forests and trees, you harvest it, you log it, you turn it into timber, for example, you reforest precisely on the spot, and you use the timber material for building houses or for a circular construction economy where you reuse a timber beam, for example, for many cycles, actually. And altogether, this is pumping CO2 out of the atmosphere at a tremendous amount. We could, for example, pump out 10 billion tons of CO2 this way in the next 200 years. Next slide, please. Okay, I skip this. And next one, please. Also skip this. Maybe if there are questions, I can use it later. Okay, what is the additional benefit of timber construction? You see here a famous church in the north of Sweden, which was put on sort of on vehicles and just rolled to a different place. You could never do with concrete and steel. So you have so many advantages. Actually, a timber frame house has only 1/10 of the weight of a concrete house. So you can either actually put additional stories on it, or you can dismantle it and move it, things like that. Next slide, please. Okay, here are just a few examples of social housing, because it was also mentioned. I mean, one of the biggest challenges of our civilization is to provide decent accommodation for people who are not rich, for example, for average people. And this can be done wonderfully with timber construction. And this is an example from Vienna. It's social housing. Next one, please. Here you see the principle, and can be many-story buildings, for example. Next one, please. Okay, I skipped this. So we just go through this. And I leave you with this sort of symbolic metaphor here. Really, it was mentioned before. We know now that building, for example, a 20-story building from cross-laminated timber is possible, but you need to use the most modern technologies we have, in particular machine learning, artificial intelligence, things like that. And so in a wonderful way, the natural world, which is using photosynthesis for growing forests, and the most advanced technical artificial world, where we use our best, so to speak, computer science and all these things, they're coming together actually. They're joining with each other, and this is the way to save the world. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Schellenhuber. It was a great pleasure to have you, to listen to you and see, how science really supports the case for sustainable wooden construction, and also how it works for cities and works for forests as well. And thank you so much for making the relationship with restoration, with the potential we have for growing forests. Here in FAO, and together with the Collaborative Partnership on Forests, we have an initiative called Grow the Solution. And that's the spirit. We need to grow the solution, and we can become carbon positive, as a professor very clearly explained to us. Thank you so much. And now we move to our expert panel, where we will hear from leaders who are advancing sustainable wood construction in diverse contexts, from innovative urban planning in Europe to addressing housing needs in Africa, to developing markets from tropical timber to mobilizing action for COP30. So our panelists bring complementary expertise across the value chain. And I will begin by asking each of our panelists today to briefly introduce themselves and tell us about their role and expertise in sustainable wood construction and the forest-based bioeconomy. And if you don't have a particular expertise on sustainable wood construction, tell us why you're here today, because I know that some of you have a different role that is about mobilizing actors to make this happen. So let me start with Mr. Bob van der Zand, Director of the Build and Wood Initiative, Metropolitan Authority, Amsterdam. Bob, over to you.
Thank you very much, Thais. Thank you for being here. My name is Bob, and I work for 4.5 years as a driver of the scaling of the use of timber in construction in the real estate industry in the metropolitan region of Amsterdam, which contains 30 municipalities, the largest region of the Netherlands. I also am a member of the board of Built by Nature, which only exists for 4 years now, and we are scaling timber in the whole world, but to begin with in Europe. So I'm an urban strategist from background, and I used to work for the administration of the city of Amsterdam from a public kind of view, but now I'm in between public and private sector.
Thanks a lot, Bob. And now we're going from Amsterdam to Nairobi. Mr. Joshua Maviti, Program Manager at UN Habitat. Joshua, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Thais, and Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joshua Maviti. As has been mentioned, I work for UN Habitat in Nairobi. And UN Habitat, in short, but in long, it's a human settlements program of the UN. And our mandate is to support member states to promote socially and environmentally sustainable buildings, housing, and cities, with an aim of achieving adequate shelter for all. So we are working with many member states and the stakeholders on that initiative. I did an initiative on sustainable housing and basically more from some projects on sustainable materials for building and construction. We have had interactive work with at the country level to look at how we can influence policy, can influence practice through the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, Global ABC. And I'll be sharing some of the insights and findings from that research. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. Pleasure to have you here with us. And now I would like to invite Ms. Françoise van der Ven, President of the Association Technique Internationale de Bois Tropicaux, to introduce herself. Françoise, over to you.
Thanks, Thais. So my name is Françoise van der Ven. I was elected on the 28th of January in 2022 as president or chair lady of ATIBT, which is actually the International Technical Association of Tropical Timber, which is based in Paris. This mandate has already been renewed in 2024, and it will again be renewed in 2026. So I'm here for a moment still. I have a vast experience in the forest timber sector in business management as well as in national associations before my election as a president of ATIBT. During my nearly 20 years in Belgium and 25 years in Africa, which was 18 years in Democratic Republic of Congo and 7 years in Gabon, I had the opportunity to build up an extensive international network and knowledge of the countries of the Congo Basin. As president of ATIBT, of course, I continue to expand my network, and so I'm very happy to meet you all today because you're new acquaintances for me, and I know I will come back to you for more information or more precise information, I would say. As president, I participate in all the working groups of ATIBT, where, of course, the main ones are forest and industry, certification, marketing, materials and standards and norms, and particularly in the cities task force. I'm also a member of the steering committee of the advisory committee on sustainable forest-based industries of FAO. And I'm also a board member of the ERAIF, which is a regional postgraduate school of integrated management and development of tropical forests and territories in Kinshasa, DRC. And I'm also a board member of the European Timber Industries Confederation. That's in short who I am. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Françoise. A great personality in the wood world. Now I'm going to go back to Nairobi and would like me to invite Ms. Nasrananda, Chief Executive Officer of the Kenya Green Building Society and Chairperson of the Africa Regional Network at World Green Building Council. Nasra, could you please introduce yourself?
Great. Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for the opportunity. It's my pleasure to be here. My name is Nasrananda. I'm the CEO of the Kenya Green Building Society. Essentially, the Kenya Green Building Society is a green building council, and our work traditionally is to champion, advocate, and educate on green buildings. However, KGBS is not your traditional green building council. We champion sustainability in the built environment, and this is informed by the fact that we are based in the global south, which means pushing for sustainability needs to look at the ecosystem of the built environment. That means for communities, it's about dignity. For businesses, it's about prosperity. And for governments, it's about building legacy. And I also chair Africa at the World Green Building Council and serve as a subnational legislator here in the Nairobi County government. So my work really sits at the intersection of policy, finance, and practice. One of the things that I was able to do is to champion the Nairobi Climate Change Management Act, which essentially gives Nairobi the mandate to push for subnational projects, which are green projects, and access green finance. Similarly, through KGBS, we've been able to influence the government's commitments for the built environment at COP 28, 29, and hopefully 30, where one of those was decarbonizing the built environment through the buildings breakthrough. Of course, FCLP's another one, and we also have something called building climate resilience with the urban poor or for the urban poor. And lastly, we were also able to champion Africa's first portfolio of green certified public buildings in Mombasa. And so for us, what we really try to do is to disrupt the conversation around sustainability with a global South lens. Kenya is leading in this regard in so many ways in Africa. One of the key things which are relevant for this context is that Kenya has the Industrial Wood Sector Vision 2050, which aims to create 85,000 green jobs and add 13.9 trillion Kenyan shillings to the GDP. So for us, sustainably sourced wood is not only a low carbon material, but a driver of that ambition, one that can accelerate climate action, resilience, and inclusive growth. And for me personally, working with wood is also about conserving not just our forests, but honoring the heritage that could, be sacred to Africans and hold ecosystems together. So today, I'm hoping to bring to this panel a Global South perspective where wood is not just a material, but an ecosystem enabler, linking forestry, construction, and manufacturing, and of course, driving both climate solutions and livelihoods. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nasra. Exciting. And this gives me a great segue to introduce our next panelist, Maria Clara Nascimento Ordonez, Coordinator of COP30 Activation Group 12, Sustainable and Resilient Constructions. Maria Clara, welcome.
Thank you so much, Thais, and I want to thank you and FAO for this kind invitation. I'm honored to be here among such esteemed guests and panelists. I am Maria Clara Nascimento, and I am the focal point for the action agenda of the incoming COP30 presidency. Well, a bit of my background over the past 9 years, I have been working with humanitarian, environmental, and sustainable development organizations across the Americas, mainly focused on government engagement and also institutional relations, so bridging the gaps between the private sector and the public sector. I have also coordinated relations with some national governments on project implementation with very multicultural teams, so across different geographies. And now, as I mentioned before, I am the focal point for axis number 4 of the action agenda. For those of you that are not familiar with this structure, the action agenda of the COP30 presidency has been built upon the foundation of the Paris Agreement and the Global Stocktake documents. So building a structure for implementation, action, and results that takes from the knowledge and the expertise and the shared agreements and goals that are in the Paris Agreement and the Global Stocktake. So my axis, the one that I'm leading and under which the building and resilient construction key objective is called axis number 4, building resilience in cities, infrastructure, and water. So again, I'm very happy to be here today and listening to all of these different experts talking about how we can achieve better results and how we can move forward and implement real change in people's lives. So thank you again. I'll pass it over to you, Thais.
Thanks a lot, Maria Clara. And so without further delay, I would like to invite the first speaker from our panel. And I would like to invite Bob to tell us a bit more about what you're doing in Amsterdam. I know that Amsterdam aims to achieve climate neutrality by 2050 with wood construction as a key strategy. The Build in Wood initiative represents an ambitious urban scale transformation. From your perspective, What were the most unexpected challenges you encountered? What advice would you give to other cities just beginning their wood construction journey?
Thank you for these questions. Let me first say we started 4 years ago by some deputy mayors that said we should have a Green Deal to reduce carbon emission in the real estate industry. So wood is a very, I mean, I don't have to repeat it again. To use wood and bio-based material is one of the best ways to reduce carbon emission and to reduce waste and the use of raw materials. So we set a target for 20% in 4 years' time for all residential new development in the metropolitan region. We created an agreement, a covenant, which was signed by 80 different parties, public, private, and knowledge institutes. So we call it the Triple Helix collaboration, which is really key. And in this collaboration, we started very enthusiastic with lots of organizations, both municipalities, provinces, and private companies. And I must say, two challenges became, well, not unexpected, but one of the biggest was, of course, the business case, because change always costs time and money. The transition costs time and money. But the business case is very easy to explain to the companies that really want to step into this new way of building, that it's not the material, it's not the cost of material. You should look at the whole value chain and also look at the costs of, you could say, the time of building, the change that is put into numbers by the companies, that they really feel it as a risk. So they they put risk into a higher price. So that was one of the things that we explained a lot in the last 4 years to different participants. And I must say they still are sometimes reluctant in that, because it's very clear that if you build faster, what is possible in timber industrialized way of building, that you can get your revenues earlier. You can also have less waste, for instance, and it also costs less money. And so there's all kinds of knots that you can turn to make the business case profitable and in currency. And some of them do. And the other challenges I see now is that many of the larger developers and constructors in the Netherlands are now shifting to a percentage, a target, which has to be reached within, let's say, 5 or 10 years. And now the public sector is a little bit lacking behind. And that's surprising that the public sector started this, but the private sector is now taking over and going faster. And although we are now at the point that we already got 10 times more projects in timber, we're not still there at the 20%, but we will go on for the next 5 years and we will reach even 30%. But some of the big companies say we want to reach 50% of all new residential buildings in 2030. And this is almost becoming a common goal for big companies in the Netherlands, in the whole of the Netherlands. So that's very trustworthy.
Thanks a lot, Bob. Very, very interesting, and really, I think, a lot to learn from Amsterdam.
I didn't give an advice, of course, to the other cities. I would say it very shortly, 2 points. Pick a target and do a triple helix, public, private, and universities, knowledge institutes. That combination, and then have leadership on both sides, on the side of the public side and the public side, and then you get some strong collaboration that will go on.
Thank you, and very, very, very important key message for our attendees today. Colleagues, I will just ask you, do we need, I was informed we are a bit over time. But so let me move without further delay to Joshua. Joshua, UN Habitat works across diverse contexts, from informal settlements to planned urban expansion. Based on your field experience, what are the most scalable models for integrating locally sourced, sustainably harvested wood into affordable housing programs, particularly in regions where traditional building codes and construction practice favor concrete and steel?
Yeah. Thank you, Tess. And I'm just glad that we had that presentation from the keynote speaker, because we are in a dilemma of some sort when it comes to the housing. And basically, we have globally 1.6 billion people living in inadequate housing. And at the same time, we are seeing that in the global south, Africa, Southeast Asia, there's a huge drive on urbanization, which means that by 2050, we'll globally expect that 70% of the population will live in the cities. And at the same time, we are expecting that of this growth, we'll see that 60% of the buildings also estimated, which will be there by 2050, they have not been built. They have not been constructed. So this brings both a challenge in looking at how we are constructing at the moment, very heavy carbon and extractive processes in getting the materials for construction. But also as an opportunity that it could create opportunity for innovation on materials, but also create jobs in the sector. But we know that there's a whole issue of then sustainability. How can we be able to meet the housing challenge we have, get people decent housing, which is also, of course, related to poverty, and at the same time maintain the developmental systems so that they can actually serve us for a long time. So what we are seeing is a situation where as I mentioned before, from what we have done on the climate action plans for building and construction in Ghana, Senegal, and Bangladesh, and also looking at other countries whereby we also have data on the housing sustainability and construction, especially in Africa. We see there is kind of a trend to invest or departure from using natural materials, timber, in construction in favor of concrete and cement. So, for instance, in Ghana, where there is a sizable wood and forest products, you find there's only almost 3% of buildings are constructed with the wood. So the issue is not that wood is not good. There's also an element of culturally people accepting that it also can produce vertically good buildings or houses, but at the same time also comfortable and also meeting the standards which are required. So one of the gaps you have seen and the models which you could also adopt is creating this awareness, and at the same time in our training of architects, engineers, and construction professionals, there's need to kind of bring this awareness, how they could integrate the traditional building methods, which techniques, which Africans basically have always had using wood to kind of produce modern and kind of comfortable housing for which we could reduce the amount of concrete and steel. So that is the need to kind of build that awareness in the education to kind of also bring back these kind of skills, because you find that the education sector or the education regimes, they are so much still, if you look at people being trained as engineers and architects, there is a way of following the conventional approach and leaving the natural or the local skills, which are not seen like a part of kind of like integrative with the modern materials and skills. So this is something we are also pushing. But also the other thing is also the policies and the building codes. You see, they don't want to kind of not they don't want, but most of the time you find there is little effort to kind of look at local materials, look at regenerative materials as viable materials for construction. So that is, in a nutshell, some of the models looking at from the policy level. But also there's also the skills which construction people have. And what you find is that in Africa and many places that the construction sector is very informal in the sense that you have, yes, the professionals, or the architects, engineers, people being able to kind of design the houses, but the building part itself is very, very, very informal. That's one thing we have found out. And there's need to kind of also intersect that kind of advocacy and also training and the skills and also creating the awareness of materials they could use and also how they could use timber sustainably. So that's some of the things which we are also finding that we could make a difference if we work with the stakeholders. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joshua. I could think of a lot of follow-up questions, but I will move directly to Françoise. Françoise, ATIBT has developed comprehensive performance guides for over 280 African timber species, many of which remain underutilized in construction. This represents an enormous untapped potential for both forest economies and sustainable building. What are the main barriers preventing architects and engineers from choosing and using these lesser-known species in their projects, and how can we overcome them?
Thanks, Thais, for this question. Indeed, we have developed this guidance, this performance guidance, very recently. It's published only in English a few weeks ago. And I would say the main barriers are the lack of technical knowledge by the architects and the engineers of African timber species. It's easier for them also to use the most common and the most known ones like sapele and sipo in Morocco, because these are, everybody knows them. And also the very negative campaigns that have been running around by certain NGOs on tropical forests also are, of course, very much making customers afraid to buy tropical timber. But if they would buy tropical certified timber, then they would be okay. But most of them don't know. So how to overcome this? I think there is a need to intensify the distribution of tools like the guidance, but we also have other documents on our website and which are also helping out and giving also a lot of technical information on life cycle and everything. So I think it's unknown by the architects and the engineers. So how to all the time approach them and make sure that everywhere they know about this, that is really a difficulty, because we are not a lot invited by them neither to make these explanations, to show what the timber is all about. And it's it's a pity because the guidance we created is to help project owners the use of tropical timber in public procurements. And as tropical timber, of course, thanks to their particular performance on natural durability, on mechanical strength, on stability, and on appearance, have so many qualities which are, could be used everywhere in construction, whether it be for inside, for construction, for flooring, for decking, for joinery, it's and external joinery. It's all suitable for it, and there are species which are very, very suitable for it. So I think for the future, also we see now in Africa that a lot of more glue laminated timber is coming, which of course is improving the yield cubic meter of tree. And it is to be noted that by the 1st of January on 2028, there will be no more export in logs from the Congo Basin. All the countries will at that time already have stepped up, and the transformation needs to be in country. And this is, of course, to create jobs. So it was said by Joshua, ATRBT is looking at that, and of course is not standing still. So we are training the trainers, because there's a lot of need of capacity building. So, and we need to have more people on the ground to do this job of training and to learn all these skills, and of course the transfer of technologies. So we also, to fight back a little bit on the campaign of the NGOs, we just recently launched also a campaign, False or True, on tropical timber, because the misconceptions which are there, we need to fight them and to be able to, of course, promote certified tropical timber from the Congo Basin. Thanks, Thais.
Thanks a lot, Françoise. And I must say that we were very pleased to have a sample of mass timber from the Congo Basin in the FAO exhibition celebrating our 80th anniversary. So, thanks a lot. And moving to Nasra Nanda. Nasra, Africa is urbanizing faster than any other continent, with massive infrastructure needs ahead. This represents a once-in-a-generation opportunity to build differently from the start, to leapfrog the carbon-intensive development pathways followed by other regions. What is your vision for positioning Africa not just as a consumer of wood construction technology, but as an innovator and leader in climate-positive building for the Global South?
Thank you. Coming from Kenya, where cities like Nairobi and Mombasa are grappling really with flooding, heat, and housing deficits, I see Africa's urbanization as fundamentally about people, resilience, and dignity. In the Global South, it's not just about cutting emissions. And I think this is where we get it wrong as a technical working group or a sector. We're speaking to each other and not to the communities, the policymakers that we're meant to work with to facilitate that market transformation. If a policymaker doesn't understand what we're trying to achieve, we are not going to have the policies, regulations that are going to be reflecting the work that we're trying to do. And so in this context, I want to say that we don't lack technical expertise, we lack relational expertise. We're not speaking to each other as people that need to understand the importance of what this could mean for our communities, for businesses, and essentially for the market and the Africa we're trying to shape. And so in this context, it's not just about cutting emissions, it's about ensuring homes are affordable, inclusive, and protective of communities, and cities are really resilient. And so my vision is for Africa to be a living laboratory of climate positive innovation. We can scale bio-based and low-carbon materials, modular housing, and nature-based infrastructure that can respond to our realities while still also creating livelihoods. And I think Kenya is already showcasing this in practice. Our members, GATS is, for example, investing in sustainable forestry value chains here in Kenya. Similarly, we have a member called Azima Homes. It's a developer who is proving that affordability and sustainability can go hand in hand. And lastly, we also have a member called Easy Housing, who is bringing in modular timber-based homes that are fast to install, climate resilient, and low carbon. And so what we're trying to do at KGBS is really communicate that solutions can be local and competitive at a global scale. And they are addressing problems or gaps that are here in Africa by African entities, so that the market doesn't feel that these are foreign problems being ambushed onto local markets. These are, foreign experts pushing down a solution to African markets. It's important. If you have ownership from the thinking, designing, and solution aspects, then you have buy-in to facilitate that transformation. And at a national level, as mentioned earlier, Kenya's Industrial Wood Sector Vision 2050 is looking at the wood sector as a key driver of unlocking potentially 85,000 green jobs, and essentially also a way of injecting 13.9 trillion Kenya shillings into the GDP. And that's important because now you stop thinking about wood as a material, you look at wood as a tool of unlocking the jobs that are needed by this young and growing population in Africa and Kenya. And similarly, for businesses, it becomes an opportunity. So that language needs to speak to the recipients of what we're trying to do. And at KGBS, we truly see sustainably sourced wood as a key lever to deliver this, not just as a material, but as an ecosystem enabler that can drive both climate goals and also economic opportunity. And, as the chair of Africa, what essentially we're trying to do is to connect these lessons across national jurisdictions into the region so that Africa is not seen as a passive recipient of solutions. We are agenda setters, we have knowledge, we just need to communicate it in a way that can truly shape what resilient, inclusive, climate positive cities should look like from a global South perspective. And if we succeed, then Africa won't just be meeting its infrastructure needs, it will be setting the global standard for resilient, inclusive cities in the 21st century with a global South perspective. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Lazar. Fantastic vision. And I'm moving to then COP30. And Maria Clara, the COP30 presidency has called for a mutirão, a collective mobilization to accelerate climate solutions. So I'm Brazilian. I know what a mutirão is, but it would be great if you could explain to us what it is. And sustainable and resilient construction is part of one of the key activation groups, is part of the activation group on sustainable and resilient construction. Could you tell us more about the acceleration plans and let us know your recommendations for a successful acceleration plan? What do you have to say to those willing to engage?
Thank you so much, Thais, for your question. And I think this is one of the questions that we have most received. First, how do you say mutirão? How do you pronounce it? And also, what does it mean? So basically, the spirit of COP30 and what we wanted to bring with the action agenda is the understanding of collaboration, of joining forces with different stakeholders, different actors of different sectors, for us to be able to ensure that actions are not only mapped, but also scaled to different geographies to see that results can have be an example to other sectors, to other people, and to foster a collaborative experience of sharing results, sharing actions, collaborating in a way that can change and transform people's lives. I think it was Bob that mentioned in his earlier words that change costs time and money, but the time and money that will be spent, the cost of inaction will be far bigger in terms both of economic, but also in affecting the well-being and people's lives. So the spirit of the COP30 was to bring all of these different ecosystems and all of the different initiatives that are already working in these different topics and that have already achieved amazing results as the ones that we were listening to today in different geographies, in different countries, and how can we organize all of these different results and actions into an integrated way of us working together and looking towards the legacy and looking towards the future. So as I very briefly explained before, this is why we have these so-called activation groups that are under the action agenda. So there are 30 different key objectives, and they are related to energy, transportation, building resilience, water, waste, finance. There are a number of topics that are under these 30 key objectives that if you Google it, you will see them. But basically, the idea is to have this understanding of collaboration and how can we integrate all of the different actions that are going to be implemented in the following years under one cohesive ecosystem. So after this was done through the building of the action agenda structure and these key objectives, we also wanted to ensure the future of action, the future of implementation. And the way that we did that was through what you mentioned, Thais, which are these plans to accelerate solutions. So taking one solution that we know can have amazing results and having it scaled through the mobilization of initiatives and organizations, the private, the public sectors that can endorse, engage, share expertise on that specific solution, but also implement in accordance to the actions that they were already going to lead. So I don't know if I can spoil this, but there is a specific plan to accelerate solutions that is on sustainable timber. and that it will be presented during COP30. So I think the calling here for all of the different people and initiatives that are here with us today would be to engage with that specific plan, to understand how actions that you are going to be implementing anyway in the geographies in which you work with can complement and make this plan more robust. So basically, these plans are action plans and a way to guide us on, okay, so we're going to do these actions. How can, as a collaborative group, we can integrate this into something bigger, that all of us that can be a guiding force for these different actions, and also for us to understand what are going to be the main results of the entire ecosystem. So not only my own individual action or my own individual results up to here to 2028, which is going to be the next global stocktake, but how, as an ecosystem, how can we have a larger impact, and how that impact can be seen as something that is groundbreaking, that is transformative, that can bring systemic change. So I'm sure, Thais, you will be mentioning a little bit more about this very special plan on sustainable timber. But the invitation here for all of you is to connect with the leaders of that specific plan and see and understand how you can support, what actions are you going to lead that are contemplated inside of the action lines of that specific plan, and thus be able to be part of COP30. Something that we are mentioning a lot to all of the different partners is that COP30 will not end in Berlin. The objective of all of this effort and all of the work that we have been doing with the different initiatives is to make sure that these solutions, such as sustainable timber and the use of sustainable wood in constructions, can have a future, can have a legacy, and that can be seen as something that brings result that is measurable and transparent. So this is what I wanted to bring today to all of you, this invitation, and then I'll give the word back to you, Thais. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria Clara. And unfortunately, I won't have time today to speak much about the plan, but indeed, the Sustainable Wood for a Sustainable World, the Forest Climate Leaders Partnership, and Built by Nature, we are leading in this framework of COP30 a plan on sustainable wood construction. We're calling it Building for Forests. And we are happy to provide you with more information. Please write to us on our email contact, and my colleagues would add an email address where you can ask for more information on that. Thank you, Maria Clara. Thank you a lot for your support. And I wish you luck with COP30. It's 20 days away, I think. So we have 6 minutes. So I will, I'm a bit uncertain. 6 minutes, we have the keynote speaker, not the keynote speaker, sorry, the closing remarks, which I think are going to be very interesting as well. So my suggestion is that we move directly to the closing remarks. And those willing to ask questions, please put your question in the Q&A box, and we will share the questions with our speakers and ensure that they get answered after the webinar. So I have the great honor to invite Ambassador Antônio da Costa e Silva Neto, International Advisor at the Ministry of Cities in Brazil. And I'm very honored because Ambassador, of course, you can imagine that he's very busy, as all of us, but especially now in the context of COP30. Ambassador is one of the chairs of Global ABC. He's also leading a call for action within this climate COP30 activation group, Sustainable and Resilient Construction. Ambassador da Costa e Silva brings invaluable perspective on the intersection of sustainable housing, climate resilience, and social equity. His work at the Ministry of Cities focuses on ensuring that Brazil's urban development supports a just transition delivering adequate and affordable housing while advancing climate goals and improving livelihoods. Ambassador, we have heard today about the technical, the scientific base, economic, and environmental potential of sustainable wood construction. Your perspective on how this can contribute to social justice and inclusive development will be a fitting way to close our discussion. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Thais. First and foremost, let me thank the organizers for inviting me to close this webinar series. It is my honor to have this opportunity, a unique opportunity. I followed the discussions from the beginning. And as I was following them, I was always thinking about the poll number 2, which had 6 options on how to move forward. And I kept thinking, well, I would choose all of them, 100%, each and every one of them. But let me focus on your invitation on 2 key ideas that I think are fundamental to looking at those 6 options, okay, which I think were very thought-provoking and all-encompassing in terms of what we need for the built environment. First and foremost, as you know, Brazil is a highly urbanized country. 87% of our population already lives in cities. A highly urbanized country with still very unjust and unequal cities, significant spaces of informal settlements and slums, which showcase that we still live in a highly urbanized and very unequal country, which is the result of a very accelerated urbanization process, which now we see happening globally. So my first reflection is that as we discuss the built environment, and as we discuss the impact of housing and the growth in urbanization, we need to clearly look at the issue of informal settlements and of ensuring what I would call social justice or urban justice, so that we will not have climate justice without social justice. We will not have climate justice without urban justice. So this is my first concern. And as I was thinking about those 6 options, one of them that I did not see that I saw being touched in the discussion, but I think it is critical, is how do we make sure that the construction value chain of materials also reaches the informal settlements, also reaches the self-built environment? How do we make sure that in pushing the agenda for wood construction, we also make sure that wood construction becomes an option for the self-built environment, an option for the informal settlements? And I think we need to be true to what we know will happen inevitably, okay? We know for a fact that the housing crisis that we are seeing globally is not necessarily just a question of lack of housing only. It's a question, I think, of the bad fit between land use or land allocation or accessibility to land. I think the issue of microfinance, the issue of reconverting, the issue of looking at housing from a systemic perspective in which the social issue becomes part of the conversation, particularly for the Global South. This is critical, but I don't think it's just for the Global South. I think it is critical everywhere we see a global housing crisis settled and being discussed. The misfit of the system, of the land, of availability, of financing, and how do you provide all those systems and reinforce certainly our strong conviction of the need to move to the bio-based construction materials. How do you make those accessible? So that is my first consideration. My second consideration, I think, is related to something that was there on the 6 options, which is ensuring that this, let's call it transformation of the construction system including the materials that we are going to use, it is intertwined with the real economy, particularly for small businesses and medium-sized business. If you look at Brazil, for instance, what you see is the cement consumption is very high, and almost 70% of it is done in small stores and in small quantities, which showcase the link between the small businesses, the self-construction, informal settlements. So the whole system works within it. It's not on the big industry, but it's rather at the very local level. So how do you territorialize this debate? How do you make sure that at the local level, people, particularly small store owners, mayors of medium and small cities, are aware of the options that they have in terms of construction materials and of the built environment? And I think this would be the second reflection. So those are the things that we are trying to bring to COP. It's not only the acceleration of solutions that you are spearheading, that others are spearheading, particularly within we're very, very happy that COP30 president put forward the fourth axis related to cities and buildings, which has their 5 components. One of the components is exactly this multi-level governance issue, which is related to how do you land these discussions at the local level? How do you ensure that the local level has ownership of the solutions? I think Nasra, to a certain extent, addressed this, and I think it needs to be locally related to local leaders, mayors, businesses, and social movements, and the whole society has to be aware of the implications of this. And I think this is something that we need to move forward for. And I would leave it at that in my 5 minutes or 6 minutes that I spent trying to conclude what I thought was extremely rich, extremely interesting debate from very different perspectives. But I wanted to bring those perspectives of social urban justice, which I think are critical for the global South in particular. And as we see the acceleration of urbanization in Africa and elsewhere, look into Latin America, which has already lived there, and what are the consequences of having an urbanization process that did not look into the social issue with the care it should have been. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ambassador, for these words. Really opening, it's a really a scenario of full of perspectives, full of good things to do, but where we need to pay attention to the inclusion dimension, and we need to pay attention for the need of multiple business models, because our societies have different configurations and different needs. And so if you don't understand the way our society makes business, we won't be able to really strike a success that is fair and just. Colleagues, thanks a lot. We started this webinar with our co-chairs from Ecuador and Canada, 2 forest countries, 2 countries committed with advancing sustainable wooden construction. We went through a keynote speaker who drove us to the science and to why we have a very strong case to strike the sustainable wood construction as a climate solution widely adopted. What are the benefits for forests, for buildings? And then we had our panelists also bringing up what are the benefits for livelihoods and for urban livelihoods, and to addressing the housing crisis in different hemispheres, in different regions, and the need to don't simply copy and paste. They need to adapt to local circumstances, to be innovative not only on the technology, but innovative in the way that we understand the problem and that we craft the solutions. It was a great pleasure to moderate this panel today. Thanks a lot to our donors, Austria and Finland, the leaders of the COLI, the country organization-led initiative on forest-based approach to the bioeconomy. And I'm looking forward to see you in our next webinar in November that close this webinar series. Thanks a lot. I wish you a very good rest of the day, and we are available for any query you might have after that. Thank you. Bye.